welcome back inside the cave on this Tuesday morning, and every Tuesday at 7:25, we call on Tom Crawford from the Crawford Podcasting Network as we are still in our break from football. Michigan coming up with Illinois this coming week. And Tom, anything new from Ann Arbor?
Well, yeah, from past Saturday, Michigan did not lose a football game, so that's good news, right? Yep. So that's a good. Check that one off. Illinois, Champaign sold out. You know, Michigan has these two road games with these opponents that have not exactly filled their stadium in the past several decades, Illinois and Indiana, and they're both sold out for the Michigan game. So I think this is like the revenge tour in reverse. A lot of teams trying to get back at Michigan. So it should be a great environment Saturday in Champaign, 3:30 on CBS. Looking forward to it. And it's compelling football. We don't know what to expect, but I'm really thinking you're going to see an improved product, this team, because you had 2 weeks to prepare. And Jack Tuttle's had all those reps over a span of 2 weeks. And I just think that you're going to see an improved football team. Whether that resonates into a W or not, we'll have to see.
Well, Illinois coming in at 5-1, but I looked at who they played. I think they only played two winning football programs during that stretch, and they got a stretch this last week, pulling it out 50-49 over a weak Purdue team. Wow, 50-49. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, what was it? They had a 27-3 lead or whatever, and they let it squander away. Yeah, Illinois. They did beat Kansas when they were ranked at the time in the opener, and they struggled with Central Michigan for quite some time. Yeah, you're right. When you look at their schedule, their body of work, they did beat Nebraska on the road. That's their best get of the year, and that's a good Nebraska team. And Illinois is always very physical under Brett Bielema, and their solid defense, and their quarterback has vastly improved from last year. So all that's good for them. And there's a lot of venom. I've been down to Michigan-Illinois games down at Memorial Stadium or whatever they call it now, and everybody hates Michigan. Everybody hates Michigan, and Illinois is right in line with everybody else. They'll have to manage the crowd, and although they had to deal with that with Washington, the noise level. I think the biggest takeaway this weekend, though, Pat, and I'm sure you might agree with me, was what happened to Washington when they went to Iowa City, and the Hawkeyes, one of the worst offenses in recent memory, hung 40 on Washington.
Yep.
Michigan could only get 17. I mean, that's when you get in that transitive property and you start scratching your head like, ooh, how bad is this Michigan team?
Well, my concern this week is the offensive line. We've had some replacements. We have some players that really weren't playing that well and being replaced. I'm hoping that Jerome Moore, he says that he really needs 10 to 12 guys on that offensive line to make it through the entire year. And I think that's totally true because, Miles Hinton has been out with injury. The center position with Preby coming in. What's your thoughts on that offensive line?
Yeah, well, I mean, Crippen, who took over for Dom Judice at center, he graded out pretty good from a variety of sources on that. So, and including what Sharon said about Cripp yesterday. So, that I think center's fine. Miles Hinton, a left tackle, a guy with an incredible amount of talent who's been inconsistent his long career at Michigan. He's the X factor on this thing. And then the other X factor is Evan Link at right tackle. The number 71, we've seen him give up a lot of quarterback pressures or even sacks, and he's a good run blocker, as we saw in the USC game. But, man, you're right about that offense. It's the one that really, really frustrates me. And that one, and then, I say that one, and then there's multiple other ones. But I'm telling you what, when I watched the Ohio State-Oregon game, and I saw the talent disparity between Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan, and just it just jumps off the screen how these wide receivers can get open, how fast they are, how crisp their route running is, and their ability to catch the football. And then you have Michigan. You have Michigan where you're waiting for the emergence of, it's like Amorian Walker caught a drag route over the middle and for like 22 yards, and we're all going crazy. Like, oh my God, there's the guy. Number one, we got our guy now. And it was one catch. And everybody was like, he was excited. Everybody, the sideline was excited. It's like, when's this going to happen? I mean, Tyler Morris got a touchdown pass in the Rose Bowl. Where's he been? Samaj Morgan still getting those little swing passes out for 6 or 7 yards. Where's he been? Frederick Moore, probably the fastest wide receiver, number 3. Where's he been? Someone has got to step up to take the pressure off the old scenario of Jack Tuttle to Colson Loveland, or Davis Warren to Colson Loveland, or even Alex Orji to Colson Loveland. I mean, you've got to have more diversity in your aerial game, and man, someone has got to emerge, or else this team's in trouble from that regard.
Tom, do you think with the increased reps that Tuttle possibly saw in practice during the bye week, that might help the passing attack to be more consistent? Maybe he's the guy that can throw guys open, so to speak.
Yeah, and Sharon talked about that. It's one thing, when you're healthy enough to be at practice and you're watching, and maybe you're doing some, skeletal work, and you're not taking a lot of reps. That's one thing, but the timing element is huge. And I don't care if you're a 7-year veteran quarterback. They call him Uncle Jack. They tease him for being so old. But I really think that the 2 weeks of practice, they took a couple days off this past week. They took Friday and Saturday off. Michigan did, and as teams typically do, you gotta kind of reboot yourself mentally and physically. And they've been banged up. Let's just be real. I mean, there's been some injuries on this team that people don't even realize. And when you have Derek Moore not playing in your game, as was the case at that defensive end position for the Washington game, that's a big loss. I mean,
right.
You can't. It's hard to navigate that, and so they got to get some guys back. And I think it sounds like that might happen. There'll be more reps and everything. So I'm trying to stay optimistic about everything. But I mean, this would be a good win. Now they got Illinois on the road, and then Saturday night, a week from Saturday, down in Ann Arbor, Michigan State at Michigan, which is, again, we'll talk about it next week, obviously, but a team that will always bring a high level of energy to the game, which is vastly improved. So if they could grab these 2 wins and go in to the Oregon game, which will be a high-profile game, with at least a chance to be relevant in the CFP picture. Michigan is going to have impact. They might not be in it, but they're going to have impact. And that would set up a great environment on November the 2nd.
And depending on how things fall this weekend, Tom, you could be looking at number 1 Oregon coming to the Big House on November 2nd with Georgia and Texas playing. Yeah,
that Georgia-Texas game is going to be crazy. 7:30 down there in Austin, and Georgia they don't back down anybody on the road, and Texas is played well. They got Quinn Ewers back, so that will be they got to get his timing back, but that'll be a great game. You're right. Oregon could be number 1, or regardless if they're number 2 or 3, whatever.
Right.
They're going to be number 2. And so it's going to be a great. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, or I'm getting ahead of ourselves, because this game with Illinois. This game is funny. I say, this is a fork in the. I tell this to Pat all the time. There's another fork in the road game. The fork in the road game. First it was Texas game, then USC, and then Washington. I mean, you got to win this game and everything, and they haven't fared too well in 2 of those ones, and they skanked by in the other one in USC. So Michigan has yet to put together a complete football game where both sides of the ball have ramped up their game, where complementary football has happened on the offensive side with running and passing, I mean, we're 6 weeks in, plus the bye week, and that has not happened yet.
Tom, if I'm going to move ahead, I'm going to look forward. If Michigan were to win all of their games minus Oregon and Ohio State, if they beat one of those two teams down the stretch, could they still make it to the playoffs?
Well, I mean, if they go 9-3 with only one more loss, obviously. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's just say hypothetically they beat Oregon, they lose to Ohio State, and they're competitive in the Ohio State game. I mean, they got a shot. They got more than a puncher's chance of sneaking in. Just because, I mean, look what's happened in college football. I mean, Alabama was very fortunate to beat South Carolina. You saw Tennessee. I mean, Florida. This is one of the worst Florida teams. They go to Knoxville, and that game goes into overtime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's parity is just overwhelming college football. And if they wanted college football with a transfer portal and NIL to look more like the NFL, they're getting there. I mean, it's like in the NFL. One of the reasons I think the NFL is so popular is because anybody can beat anybody every day. There's not these, 35.5 point, spreads, and it's just a matter of what's the final score going to be. That's being diminished a great deal. I'm not saying those games don't happen; they still do. But at the same token, wow, we're seeing some crazy stuff. Even when we go into a weekend, not the case this weekend, but in past weekends, well, there's not a lot of big matchups or top 25 team match, and then that's when the upsets happen. So I'm really enjoying, despite Michigan dropping off, I'm really enjoying this season so far.
It has been a good season for college football fans. Just fans of the game in general. I agree. One question about this Saturday's game, Tom. How important is it for Michigan to get off to a good start in Champaign on Saturday?
Well, I think that's always important because, first of all, Michigan, although I give them credit for coming back, they were down 14-0 to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
They came back. They just don't have the offense to like they did in the past to get back in the game, where you got J.J. McCarthy just making plays because someone has to make a play, and he's going to make a play. And Blake Corman, there's so many integral tools of that team on that offense that are now moved on. So you're right, it's very important. I think the biggest thing though is just eliminate the freaking silly mistakes. They got to win the turnover battle, and they lost it again. And the two critical turnovers by Jack Tuttle were absolutely killer. They can't do that, and they got to keep on their feet. I mean, the slippage, in Washington. That question was asked by my good friend Chris Ballas of On3 yesterday, and it wasn't like it was attributed to we had the wrong cleats or anything like that. They're just not getting their feet under them. Donovan had a touchdown. I swear to God, he had a touchdown
question.
in that crease one. He had a single high safety out there. He could have just blown by him like he's parked on the side of the road. So there's just a lot of ways to lose a football game, and they found a lot of ways to lose that football game at Washington.
Mm-hmm.
John, we're up against the clock here, but let's get your prediction on the score here at the Michigan-Illinois game.
I'm going to go 21-17 Wolverines.
I was thinking of the same thing.
A win and a cover.
I mean, I just, I do probably put on the glove goggles too much. But I just think that they've had 2 weeks to prepare. There's a lot of talent on this team. This is still a great defense, and they have one of the greatest players in the country right now in Mason Graham. And if they get some of these healthy, I think they're going to get these healthy guys back, including Derek Moore. And I just think they're going to find a way. I've said that before, and been wrong. But I'm hoping the third time's a charm on this one.
We got to be positive. That's for sure.
There you go.
All right. Hey, one last question here. Michigan basketball coach May getting ready to kick the season off.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going down to Pro Media Day on Friday, which goes from like 2 o'clock until like 7 at night. I Maybe we get to see Dusty May. Then we watch the end. Pro scouts, I guess, try out. Almost like in a combine thing, the Michigan players for future considerations, and then they have a practice, and then we get player interviews. So I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know this team very well, and I'm so glad we're going to have the opportunity to go down there and spend the afternoon with that basketball team, get to know them, because I think they're going to be fun to watch.
Well, we'll talk to you about that next week here at Inside the Cave.
All right, guys. Always appreciate you having me on.
Tell us how folks can listen to your podcast.
Yeah, just Tom's Take Community, all one word. Go out on my YouTube channel. That's all one word, no apostrophe. Same thing on my Facebook community page. And engage, and a lot of Michigan content. And, still a lot of football to be played, meaningful football for Michigan. And that starts on Saturday afternoon.
All right, Tom Crawford will be with us next Tuesday, 7:25. Have yourselves a great weekend.